The skeletal remains of Valthari outpost stretched across the crystalline desert like the bones of some ancient leviathan. Cale Brennan adjusted his filtration mask and checked his scanner one more time. 3 days of searching through the ruins had yielded nothing but scrap metal and radiation burns. His water reserves were running low, and the twin suns would set in another hour. He should have turned back yesterday. The outpost had been humanity's furthest reach into the Andromeda spiral before the collective wars reduced it to twisted metal and melted glass. Now it served as a graveyard for scavengers foolish enough to believe the stories about alien technology hidden in its depths. Cale was apparently one of those fools. His boots crunched on crystallized sand as he approached what had once been the central command structure. The building's upper floors had collapsed inward, creating a maze of rubble and exposed conduits. He'd saved this section for last, knowing it would be the most dangerous to navigate. That's when he heard it, a sound so faint he almost missed it beneath the whisper of wind through broken walls. A voice, weak, desperate, speaking in a language that made his translator implant buzz with confusion. Cale drew his sidearm and crept toward the sound. In his 5 years of scavenging the outer rim, he'd learned that voices in dead places usually meant trouble. Raiders, claim jumpers, or worse, the radiation-mad hermits who haunted the deep ruins. The voice came again, clearer now. His translator managed to parse fragments. Please. Hunger. Dying. He rounded a corner and stopped dead. A figure, huddled in the shadow of a collapsed beam, wrapped in what looked like ceremonial robes that shimmered with an inner light. The fabric was torn and dirty, but underneath, Cale could see skin the color of moonlight on deep water, pale blue with an almost luminescent quality. The figure looked up at his approach, and Cale's breath caught. She was humanoid, but clearly not human. Her hair fell in waves of deep crimson around a face that was both alien and achingly beautiful. Her eyes were large and luminous, a shade of violet he'd never seen before. But it was the desperation in those eyes that made him lower his weapon. Please, she whispered, her voice carrying an accent that seemed to dance between syllables. I am so hungry. Kyle's survival instincts screamed at him to back away. Unknown alien species were dangerous by definition, but she looked so frail, so desperate. Her robes hung loose on a frame that spoke of prolonged starvation. Who are you? He asked, keeping his distance but not raising his weapon. What are you doing here? I am... She paused, struggling with the words. I am Ziriah. I was cast out, left to die. Her luminous eyes fixed on his. You are human, yes? I have studied your people. You show mercy to the weak. Sometimes, Cale said carefully, when it doesn't get us killed. Something in his tone must have conveyed his wariness because Ziriah's expression shifted. I offer no harm. I cannot. I am too weak. She gestured, to herself with hands that trembled. I only ask for food, sustenance. I will die here without it. Cale studied her for a long moment. His rational mind catalogued all the reasons to walk away. Unknown alien, possible trap, limited supplies. But something about her desperation felt genuine, and despite everything the galaxy had thrown at him, he'd never been able to ignore someone in need. Against his better judgment, he pulled a nutrition bar from his pack and tossed it to her. She caught it with reflexes that seemed impossibly quick for someone so weakened, tearing open the wrapper with an urgency that spoke of genuine starvation. As she ate, her eyes never left his face. You are kind, she said between bites. Kinder than my own people were. Don't read too much into it, Cale replied. But he found himself sitting down across from her. I know what it's like to be alone. Ziriah finished the bar and looked at him with something that might have been hope. Feed me, she said softly, and I will give you something no human woman ever could. What? Her violet eyes seemed to glow in the dying light. Children. Offspring that will heal the stars themselves. Kyle stared at Ziriah for a long moment, her words echoing in the silence of the ruined outpost. "Children," he repeated, his voice barely above a whisper. "What are you talking about?" She shifted closer, her movements more fluid now that she'd eaten. "My people, the ethereal collective, we were engineered for perfection over millennia. Strength, intelligence, beauty, fertility beyond measure. But with perfection came control." The twin suns cast long shadows through the broken structure as Zariah began to speak of her past. Her voice carried a musical quality that seemed to resonate in his chest. Every birth was planned, every pairing decided by genetic compatibility matrices. I was bred to mate with Valdris, a cold, calculating male whose DNA would complement mine perfectly. Her hands clenched into fists. But I refused. I would not be cattle, bred for someone else's vision of genetic superiority. Kyle found himself leaning forward, drawn in by her story. "So they exiled you?" "Worse. They stripped me of my birthright, severed my connection to the collective consciousness, and left me to starve on this dead world." Her eyes met his. "But they made one mistake. They left me with my greatest gift, my ability to create life with any compatible species." A chill ran down Cale's spine. "Any species? Humans share more genetic markers with us than our scientists ever admitted. Your people's adaptability, combined with our enhanced biology." She paused, studying his reaction. "The offspring would be extraordinary. Beings capable of bridging the gap between our species." Kale stood abruptly, pacing to the edge of their shelter. The idea seemed impossible, yet something in her voice made him want to believe. "Even if that were true, I can't." He stopped, his throat tightening. "Cannot what?" The words came out broken, painful. "I lost my wife and daughter 3 years ago, plague ship from the Kepler colonies. Elena tried to have children for years before that, but I'm sterile. Genetic damage from radiation exposure during my military service." Zariah rose gracefully, approaching him with careful steps. "Your human medicine could not help, but I am not bound by human limitations." She reached out, her fingertips barely touching his arm. "I can sense the damage within you. My body produces enzymes, hormones, cellular repair agents that could heal what was broken." Her touch sent warmth spreading through his arm. For the first time in years, Kyle felt something other than emptiness when he thought about the future. "Why me?" he asked. "You could have chosen anyone. Because you fed me when you could have walked away. Because you carry loss like I do, and you understand the weight of being alone." Her violet eyes searched his face. "And because something in your genetic pattern calls to mine. I felt it the moment I saw you." Over the following days, as they made camp in the ruins, Zariah's strength returned with remarkable speed. She moved with fluid grace, her pale blue skin seeming to glow with inner vitality. Cale found himself watching her more often, drawn to the way she hummed while tending their small fire, or how her crimson hair caught the light of the twin suns. One evening, as they shared another of his dwindling rations, she caught him staring. "You have questions," she said softly. "Hundreds." He hesitated, then asked what had been troubling him most. "How do you know this would work? The genetic compatibility, the healing. How can you be certain?" Instead of answering with words, Zariah moved closer on their makeshift bedding. "May I show you?" When he nodded, she placed her palm flat against his chest. Immediately, warmth spread through him, but it was more than physical. He could feel her somehow, her thoughts, her emotions, her absolute certainty about what they could create together. "This is how my people truly communicate," she whispered. "Through touch, through shared essence. Can you feel it? The potential between us?" Kyle gasped as sensation flooded through him. He could sense the damage she spoke of being systematically identified and catalogued. More than that, he could feel her loneliness, her hope, her growing affection for him. "I feel it," he breathed, his hand covering hers. As the connection deepened, the ruins around them seemed to fade, leaving only the two of them in a bubble of shared possibility. 3 weeks had passed since their first night together, and the ruins of Valthari Outpost had become something neither Kale nor Zariah had expected. A home. They'd established a routine among the broken walls, scavenging for useful materials. During the day, sharing stories and meals in the evening, and exploring the growing connection between them as the desert night wrapped around their shelter. Zariah's transformation had been remarkable. Her pale blue skin now held a luminescent quality that seemed to pulse with inner light, and her movements carried a fluid strength that spoke of fully restored vitality. But it was the changes in Kale that surprised him most. The persistent ache in his joints had vanished. His reflexes had sharpened, and for the first time in years he woke each morning without the crushing weight of despair. "You're different," Zariah observed one evening as they sat watching the twin suns set. She was pressed against his side, her head resting on his shoulder. Stronger, more vital. "It's you," he replied, pressing a kiss to her crimson hair. "Whatever you're doing to me, it's working." She tilted her head to look at him, violet eyes dancing with mischief. "What I'm doing is loving you, Kale Brennan. The healing is merely a side effect." Their lips met in a kiss that had become as natural as breathing. When they broke apart, Zariah's expression grew serious. "The changes are accelerating. Can you feel it?" Kyle nodded. Over the past few days, he'd noticed subtle shifts in his perception. Colors seemed more vivid, his hearing more acute. Sometimes when Zariah touched him, he could almost sense her thoughts. "My people call it the resonance," she explained. "When two compatible beings bond deeply enough, their essences begin to harmonize. It's the first step in creating our offspring." That night, their lovemaking took on a new intensity. As their bodies moved together, Kale felt the barriers between them dissolving completely. He could feel Zariah's joy, her desire, her absolute certainty that what they were creating together would change everything. "Now," she whispered against his ear as pleasure built between them. "Can you feel it beginning?" And he could. A warmth that started deep within and spread outward, as if his very cells were being rewritten. The sensation was overwhelming, transcendent, and when release finally claimed them both, Kyle felt something fundamental shift inside him. They lay entwined afterward, both breathing heavily. Zariah's skin seemed to glow brighter, and when she placed her hand on his chest, Kyle could feel a new rhythm there. Not quite his heartbeat, but something else entirely. "Is it?" he began. "Yes." Her smile was radiant. "The first spark of life. But it will take time to fully manifest. My people gestate differently than yours." Their peace was shattered the next morning by the rumble of engines. Kyle grabbed his rifle and peered through a gap in their shelter's wall to see 3 salvage haulers approaching the outpost. Scavenger gangs, the kind that killed first and asked questions never. "We need to move," he told Zariah, already packing their essential supplies. But as they prepared to flee, Zariah stopped him with a touch. "Wait, let me try something." She closed her eyes and placed both hands flat against the ruined wall. For a moment, nothing happened. Then the metal began to shift, flowing like liquid to seal gaps and create hidden passages. "How did you—" "The resonance works both ways," she said, her eyes now glowing with inner fire. "Your adaptability is awakening dormant abilities in me. We're stronger together than either of us could be alone." They used her newfound powers to evade the scavengers, moving through passages she created in the ruined structure. As they hid in a concealed chamber, listening to the raiders tear apart their former shelter, Kyle marveled at what they'd become together. "They're gone," Zariah whispered hours later, her enhanced hearing confirming the departure of the engines. When they emerged, their shelter was destroyed, but something else had changed. Where Zariah had touched the walls, new growth was sprouting, crystalline formations that pulsed with soft light. "The ruins are responding to us," she breathed in wonder. "To what we're creating." That night, as they made love under the alien stars, the crystalline growths brightened as if feeding off their connection. And deep within Kale's transformed body, He could feel their future taking shape, something unprecedented, something that would indeed heal the stars themselves. "I love you," he whispered against her luminescent skin. "And I love you," she replied, "both for who you are and for who we're becoming together." The ruins hummed around them, alive with new possibility. 2 months had passed since the scavenger attack, and the ruins of Althari Outpost had become something entirely new. The crystalline growths Ziriah had first manifested now covered entire sections of the structure, creating a living network that pulsed with bioluminescent light. The outpost was healing itself just as Kale had been healed, and the changes in both of them were accelerating. Kale stood before what had once been a broken mirror, staring at his reflection in wonder. His hair, once streaked with premature gray, had returned to its original dark brown. His eyes held flecks of violet that hadn't been there before. Most remarkably, his body had gained muscle mass and coordination that surpassed even his military prime. "The integration is nearly complete," Ziriah said, approaching from behind. Her own transformation was even more dramatic. Her pale blue skin now held veins of silver that traced elegant patterns across her form, and her crimson hair seemed to move with a life of its own. She placed her hands on his shoulders, and immediately he felt the connection between them. Stronger now, a constant awareness of her thoughts and emotions. Through their bond, he could sense the 3 life forms growing within her, each one unique, each one a perfect fusion of their genetic heritages. 3? He had asked in amazement when she first told him. "My people often bear multiple offspring, but these—" She had paused, her hand on her still flat stomach. "These will be something new. I can feel their potential even now." The pregnancy progressed unlike anything in human or ethereal experience. Instead of months, the gestation would take only weeks, accelerated by the same forces that had transformed them both. And rather than weakness, it brought Ziriah increasing strength and abilities. One night, as they lay together in their transformed shelter, Ziriah suddenly stiffened. "They're coming." The birth was nothing like Kale had expected. Instead of pain and struggle, there was a gentle luminescence that filled their chamber. Ziriah's body seemed to open like a flower, releasing 3 forms that emerged already breathing, already aware. The first was predominantly human in appearance, but with skin that held a subtle blue tint and eyes that swirled with inner light. The second appeared more ethereal, with silver-traced skin and crimson hair, but with distinctly human features. The third was something entirely new, a perfect fusion that seemed to shift between both heritages as Kyle watched. "They're beautiful," he whispered, tears streaming down his face as he held his first child, a daughter whose tiny hand gripped his finger with surprising strength. "They're perfect," Ziriah agreed, cradling the other 2. "Can you feel it? Their potential?" And he could. Through the bond they all now shared, Kale sensed abilities beyond imagination. The children could already communicate telepathically, their minds touching his and Ziriah's with pure love and curiosity. More than that, he could feel their capacity for healing, for growth, for bridging the gaps between species. As the days passed, the children grew with remarkable speed, not just physically but mentally. Within a week, they were walking and speaking in both human language and the musical tones of Ziriah's people. Within 2 weeks, they were demonstrating abilities that defied explanation, healing small wounds with a touch, making the crystalline structures grow and reshape at will, even communicating with the primitive AI system still functioning in the ruins. "We can't stay here," Kale said one evening as they watched their children play, manipulating light and matter as easily as human children might play with toys. "Word will spread. The government, the corporations, other alien species. They'll all want to study them, use them." Ziriah nodded gravely. "My people will sense what has happened eventually. They'll come, not to welcome us, but to reclaim what they'll see as stolen genetic material." "Then we run?" "No." Her violet eyes held determination. "We build. These ruins, This place where we found each other, it's becoming something new. A sanctuary, a place where others like us can come. Others. The galaxy is full of outcasts, Kale. Humans who don't fit their society's molds, aliens exiled from their own people, hybrids and mutations that exist in the spaces between species. She gestured to their transformed surroundings. This could be a haven for all of them. That night, as they made love with the passion that had only grown stronger through their transformation, the entire outpost responded. The crystalline network pulsed brighter, and Kale felt something new beginning, not just in Ziraya's body, but in the very foundations of their sanctuary. More children? He asked breathlessly. Always, she whispered against his lips. We'll fill the stars with hope. Their first 3 children, now mobile and curious, approached their parents as they lay entwined. The eldest, whom they'd named Arya, spoke in her melodious voice. Others are coming, lost ones, broken ones. They need what we have. Through the crystalline network, they could sense it, ships approaching, drawn by signals they didn't fully understand. But unlike the scavengers who had come before, these carried souls seeking something more than mere survival. Then we'll be ready for them, Kyle said, pulling his family close as the transformed outpost hummed with life around them. 5 years later, the former ruins of Valthari Outpost bore no resemblance to the dead place Kale had first explored. The crystalline network had grown into a sprawling complex of living architecture, its bioluminescent walls housing a community of nearly 300 souls. Humans, aliens, and hybrids from across the galaxy. Kyle stood on the observation deck of the central spire, watching his children play in the gardens below. Arya, now appearing to be about 12 despite her 5 years, was teaching a group of younger hybrid children how to coax flowers from the crystal soil. Her siblings, Davin and Echo, worked together to repair a damaged atmospheric processor, with abilities that combined human ingenuity with ethereal intuition. Proud? Ziraya asked, joining him at the railing. Her appearance had stabilized into something even more magnificent. Tall and elegant, with the silver tracery on her blue skin forming intricate patterns that shifted with her moods. She was visibly pregnant again, their 7th child. And the network hummed with anticipation. Beyond words, Kale replied, wrapping his arms around her from behind. His own transformation had continued over the years, granting him longevity and capabilities that made him an effective leader for their growing community. Sometimes I can barely believe this is real. Believe it, said a familiar voice behind them. They turned to see Commander Rita Vance, one of the first refugees to find their sanctuary. A former military officer court-martialed for refusing to participate in alien genocide, she now served as their head of security. 3 more ships requesting sanctuary arrived this morning. Word is spreading faster than we anticipated. Kyle nodded. They'd known this day would come. Their little haven couldn't remain secret forever, not when their children's abilities were beginning to manifest on a scale that defied understanding. Arya could heal injuries that should have been fatal. Davin could communicate with AI systems, as if they were old friends. Echo seemed to exist partially outside normal space-time, appearing wherever they were needed most. Any word from the collective? Ziraya asked. Long-range sensors picked up a fleet moving in this direction. They'll be here within days. Rita's expression was grim. Your people aren't coming to negotiate. Ziraya's hand moved protectively to her swollen belly. They want to reclaim what they see as stolen genetic heritage. They'll try to take our children, study them, control them. Over my dead body, Kyle said quietly, but with a steel that made even Rita step back. That night, as they lay together in their private chambers, Ziraya's labor began. But this birth was different from all the others. As their newest child emerged, a son who seemed to embody pure light, the entire network resonated with power that could be felt across star systems. He's the key, Ziraya gasped, cradling the luminous infant. The bridge between all species. I can feel it. The child, whom they named Beacon, looked up at them with eyes that held the wisdom of ages. When he touched Kale's hand, visions flooded. His mind, ships arriving, Not just the collective fleet, but vessels from dozens of species, all drawn by the birth of something unprecedented. "They're coming," Arya said, appearing in their doorway with her siblings. All of them. The old ones who would bind us, and the new ones who would learn from us. The next morning brought chaos. The skies above their sanctuary filled with ships of every conceivable design. The ethereal collective's crystalline vessels hung alongside human battle cruisers, Zephyrian bioships, and craft from species Kale didn't recognize. But as the first shuttles began to descend, something unexpected happened. The hybrid children throughout the sanctuary began to sing, a harmony that transcended species barriers and spoke directly to the hearts of all who heard it. The song told a story of unity, of the possibility that lay not in the purity of any single species but in the beautiful complexity of connection across all life. It spoke of children who could heal the wounds between worlds, who carried the potential for a future where diversity was strength rather than division. One by one, the warships powered down their weapons. Representatives from every fleet requested permission to land peacefully. In the great assembly hall they'd grown from living crystal, Kale stood before the gathered ambassadors of 100 worlds. Zariah beside him, their newborn son in her arms glowing softly with inner light. "You came expecting to find an abomination," he said, his voice carrying clearly through the chamber. "Instead, you found hope. Our children aren't human or ethereal, or any single thing. They're something new, something better. They represent evolution," Zariah added, her musical voice harmonizing with Baby Beacon's soft humming. "Not the controlled, sterile perfection my people sought, but the beautiful chaos of life finding new ways to flourish." The leader of the Aryo collective fleet, an imposing figure Kale recognized as High Geneticist Valorian, stepped forward. "These hybrid offspring are an affront to genetic purity. They must be contained, studied." His words cut off abruptly as Beacon reached one tiny hand toward him. The moment the child's fingers touched the ethereal skin, Valorian's expression transformed from rigid authority to wonder. I can feel it," he whispered. "The potential, the harmony." Tears began to flow down his angular face. "We were wrong, so terribly wrong." Similar scenes played out across the assembly as other children approached the various delegates. Fear and prejudice melted away, replaced by understanding and hope. By the end of the day, the Valthari sanctuary had become more than a refuge. It was the foundation of something unprecedented. The Interspecies Harmony Accord was signed that evening, establishing the sanctuary as neutral ground where any being could find acceptance and where the hybrid children could grow and learn without fear. Years passed. The sanctuary expanded into a city, then a world-spanning civilization. Kyle and Zariah's children, now numbering in the dozens, took their place as healers, teachers, and bridges between species throughout the galaxy. On quiet evenings, Kyle would sometimes return to the original chamber where they'd first met. The walls still held the faint impressions of those desperate early days, a reminder of how far they'd come. "Do you regret it?" Zariah would ask, joining him in these moments of reflection. "The simple life you left behind?" "Never," he would answer, pulling her close as their children's laughter echoed through the crystal halls. "You promised me offspring no human woman could give. You gave me so much more." "What's that?" "A future worth living, a legacy that spans the stars." And in the distance, their children's voices would rise in harmony, carrying their message of hope to every corner of the galaxy, a promise that love could indeed conquer the spaces between worlds.